We say, they're always arguing, or, they always argue, and why?
Both, they're always arguing, and, they always argue, are correct grammatically, and both convey essentially the same meaning. They're always arguing uses the present continuous tense, which suggests that the action is ongoing and happening at the time of speaking. This construction might imply a slightly more active or ongoing argumentative behavior, rather than occasional or intermittent arguments. On the other hand, they always argue uses the simple present tense, which suggests a habitual or general behavior that happens repeatedly over time. This construction might imply that the people in question have a tendency to argue with each other regularly. Overall, the difference between these two constructions is subtle and largely a matter of stylistic choice.
Make sentences with argue in the context HVAC and afterward in the context of React Web Developer. Each time, you make 5 sentences within affirmative form, interrogative form, negative form.
HVAC. Affirmative. I argue that a regular maintenance schedule is essential for the optimal performance of your HVAC system. We can argue that upgrading your HVAC system to a more energy-efficient one can save you a lot of money in the long run. Experts argue that changing your HVAC air filter regularly can significantly improve indoor air quality. It's hard to argue that investing in a smart thermostat can make your HVAC system more convenient to use and save energy. Some people argue that ductless mini-split HVAC systems are better than traditional HVAC systems in terms of energy efficiency and comfort. Interrogative. Can we argue that HVAC maintenance is necessary to keep your system working efficiently? Why do some people argue that ductless mini-split HVAC systems are better than traditional HVAC systems? Is it valid to argue that a smart thermostat is a worthwhile investment for your HVAC system? Have you ever heard anyone argue that replacing an old HVAC system is more cost-effective in the long run? Are there any experts who argue that HVAC air filters do not need to be changed frequently? Negative. I don't think you can argue against the fact that a dirty air filter can cause your HVAC system to malfunction. Some people argue that HVAC maintenance is a waste of money, but I don't agree. It's hard to argue that an old and inefficient HVAC system is better than a new and energy-efficient one. No one can argue that having an HVAC system that constantly breaks down is a good thing. I haven't heard anyone argue that using an HVAC system without proper installation is safe. React Web Developer. Affirmative. I argue that using React for web development can improve website performance and speed. It's reasonable to argue that React's component-based architecture makes it easier to develop and maintain web applications. Some developers argue that React's virtual DOM feature is one of its most significant advantages over other frameworks. We can argue that using React can lead to more scalable and reusable code in web development projects. It's easy to argue that the vast React community and ecosystem make it a popular choice for web developers. Interrogative. Can we argue that React is the best framework for web development? Why do some developers argue that using React can lead to faster and more efficient web applications? Is it valid to argue that React's component-based architecture is more manageable than other web development frameworks? Have you ever heard anyone argue that using React is not suitable for small-scale web development projects? Are there any downsides to using React that developers may argue against? Negative. I don't think you can argue that React is the only framework suitable for web development. Some developers argue that React's learning curve is too steep, but I believe it's worth the effort. It's hard to argue that using a less popular framework than React can lead to better web application development. No one can argue that React is the only solution to web development problems. I haven't heard anyone argue that using React makes web development slower or less efficient.